Hi everyone, it's Vita from Latvia. And yes, once again, I have a little piece of paper with me. Mm, Cannot without it. As you probably know, English is not my native language, so I translated my note beforehand. That makes it much easier for me to speak and hopefully much easier for you to understand me. It's been a little while since my last video, but honestly, I've been thinking about all of you a lot. Yeah, today I'd like to talk about two things. First, I'd like to briefly look back at Eurovision, but most importantly, I'd like to revisit the card reading I did about the war in Ukraine and see how those symbols seem to have unfolded in real life. Today's videos is really about those symbols. Before we get to that, so let me say a few words about Eurovision. Right after the contest ended, I honestly thought I had completely failed. But in the end, I found myself absolutely fascinated by the way the symbols revealed themselves. At first, I believed I was reading each country's semi-final result. Later, I realized that cards had actually been showing me something much broader, the overall energy of each song. In other words, my interpretation was simply too narrow. Take Bulgaria, for example. Bulgaria won. And what did I say about Bulgaria? I said I saw unexpected support from the audience, high appreciation from the jury, that it looked almost like winning the lottery, and that there was enormous potential if only the artist truly believed in herself. Later in interview, um, after interview, Dara kept sorry for my English. Dara kept repeating that same phrase: "Be delusional, be delusional." She spoke about the importance of believing in yourself and said that she had been manifesting this victory day after day. That immediately reminded me of the magician archetype, the very card I had drawn for her. So, yeah, that was wow, actually. Then there was Luxembourg. I said I saw tears, right? And in fact, she was the only performer who became emotional and cried during an interview. So, you see how unfolding in their own way those cards. But it's interesting because you always been shown something, but not always we can interpret it, yeah, so precisely. Then there was Cyprus. I said I saw the energy of disagreement and dissatisfaction surrounding the results. At that time, I never imagined that the people creating all the controversy would actually be the fans themselves. Do you remember the huge discussion about Cyprus' incredible success in the Spotify viral chart compared to its surprisingly low placement in the Eurovision final? Looking back now, I find that really fascinating. Yeah, all those small things and some other small things was wow, wow, wow. But today I'd actually like to look back at something else. Earlier this year in February, I published a video about a possible summer turning point. Several months have passed since I made that video. Now it's July. And I feel this is the right moment to go back and look at what I saw back then. And I feel this is the right Oh, sorry, I already said it. I'm not trying to prove that I was right. Quite the opposite. What interests me much more is looking at what I understood correctly, what I didn't fully understand at that time, and what I would interpret differently today after seeing how events have unfolded. To me, that's one of the most fascinating aspects of working with symbols. A symbol rarely reveals its full meaning immediately. Sometimes it takes months before one small detail suddenly appears in a completely different light. Let's begin with the main idea. Back then, I spoke about a summer turning point. I said that one difficult chapter was coming to an end and the new balance was beginning to emerge. I kept using words like transition, change of direction, and a new reality. At that time, I didn't know exactly, of course, how those symbols would unfold. Today, I simply find it interesting to look back and ask, can we actually see something like that happening? Can we actually see something like that happening? Yeah. Russia. Russia. Where is Russia? I pulled this card for Russia. Look. Russia. Do you see this card? So I will read. Russia. Before I go any further, I'd like to remind you of something I said back then, one of the main possibilities. I mentioned was that Russia seemed to be going through some kind of painful event. One of the main possible I mentioned was that Russia seemed to go through some kind of painful event. At that time, I had no idea what that event might be. Then I pulled this card. This very first feeling it gave me was isolation. A monk standing alone in the mountains, separated from the rest of the world. It immediately reminded me of the hermit archetype. At first, I interpreted them mainly as political isolation, but there were two details that really stayed with me. The first was the dark sky. Look, this one. Yeah. The second was the bright red cloak, actually. Look. Yeah. I just want you to see how symbols talk to us. It's so it's amazing. I even remember that for a brief moment the image made me think about nuclear weapons. Not because the card clearly suggested that, of course not that because, but because those dark clouds created such a heavy emotional atmosphere. By the way, now we are hearing about this idea, right? We are afraid that it can come from Russia, this nuclear, right? So, but let's continue to read. Today, however, I see this symbol quite differently. Over the past few months, we've repeatedly seen videos and photographs of huge black clouds of smoke rising above burning infrastructure in Russia. And suddenly everything clicked. Suddenly I was, wow, again. It's my favorite word, I think, wow. The red cloak began to remind me of flames. The dark sky reminded me of smoke. I'm not claiming that's what the card objectively meant. Well, obviously, actually. I'm simply sharing how I understand the symbol today. Another thing has changed in my understanding of isolation. At first, I thought mainly about political isolation. Today, I think isolation can also be something much more practical. When fuel supplies and logistics are disrupted, people's ability to move is affected as well. Transportation becomes more difficult. People stand in long squares uh, for fuel. I forgot the word. How do you say this? But you understand. I hope you understand. People have been seeing waiting. Yeah, I already said. People, yeah. Movement slows down in a simple sense. That too is a form of isolation. Something else caught my attention. In a completely different reading, I drew another card that gave me a very similar feeling. Where is this card? There was this one, sorry. I shouldn't prepare. Actually, I prepared, but I didn't think to show right now. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Okay, not now. Sorry. I found it here. I just look some similarities. See? It's alone, it's looking sad and alone. And there is the lone. Yeah? See? Something very similar. Once again, we see single person. There is a strong feeling of solitude. To me, that suggests that this theme of isolation wasn't accidental. It appeared more than once, and I find that fascinating. Ukraine, look, Ukraine. That was then I pulled this card, right? Back then, I said that this person didn't appear emotional. Instead, I felt I was looking at a psychological defense mechanism. Someone who had switched off their emotions and moved into a more rational state of mind. At the time, I even suggested that this could represent a survival strategy. Looking at events today, I still find the interpretation very interesting. What I see is countries that, despite its extortion, continues to act in a highly strategic way. Rather than reacting emotionally, difficult decisions are being made with careful calculation. That is exactly the feeling this card gave me from the very beginning, and I was talking about this. The information flag. Another theme I spoke about quite a lot back then was what I called the informational fog. At that time, I was also analyzing a prediction made by Latvian psychic who suggested that Ukraine army might eventually turn against its own government. So I asked a very specific question: what might he have been picking up from the informational field? One of the possibilities I discussed was an organized cope at all. I hope I read right. I suggested that it could represent the energy of protest, a spontaneous movement of people and emotional public reaction. Today we do indeed see protests, right? I saw one. But at the same time, we don't see the scenario in which Ukraine collapses or its army refuses on a large scale to defend the country. What I find interesting in something else, at the very same time, we can also see how these protests are often presented very differently on social media. Sometimes they create the impression that Ukrainians are protesting against the war itself, when in reality the situation is far more complex. And today that is exactly what reminds me of the informational flag I spoke about back then. A change of direction. This is this is another one. Oh yeah, the flame is there. And finally, I'd like to talk about the change of direction. Back then, I wasn't entirely sure what that symbol meant. Today, my personal impression is that one possible interpretation is that the dynamics of the war have changed. The war is no longer perceived as one-sided process. More and more often we see strikes taking place inside Russian territory as well. Personally, I have feelings that for at least part of Russian society, the belief that the war would always remain far away, that it would never reach their everyday lives is beginning to crack. I'm not claiming that this is exactly what the symbol meant, that this is simply my interpretation today. It's resonating a lot with me, and that's precisely why I find it so fascinating to go back to my old notes from time to time, not to prove that everything came true, but to better understand what the symbols may have been trying to tell me, and what I myself hadn't fully understood yet. The other cards. Oh, the other cards. I also ask another question. How would different countries respond at this turning point? Do you remember, if someone watched? Or in other way, what psychological or strategic role might each of them play? This was actually what I meant, of course. And there was another cards. I will show you now. Cards. Look, that was very interesting. The United States. Is that not interesting? What do we see here? A man standing between two opposing forces. Well, sorry, I didn't see whether. Yeah, women. He isn't pushing either side way. He isn't embracing either. I said it's pushing. Isn't pushing either side way. He isn't embracing either side either. Instead, he seems to be maintaining a balance between them. Today, this reminds me of a country that is constantly balancing between different allies, domestic politics and foreign policy. If I had to describe it in one word today, I would probably call it balance. Actually, that was the word I said, because I remember there was this card, tarot card, about balancing. And actually, really, why not? NATO. This card gives me, look, this card gives me the impression that NATO is studying the situation, or perhaps a better way to put it is that NATO is reading the situation. There is no sense of rushing. Instead, there is careful observation, continuous analysis that fits very well with the way NATO operates through intelligence, analysis, planning, and coordination. Yeah. It's actually, it is the NATO reaction, I think, right? Like this. Papers, new agreements, and yeah, like this. Europe constantly was those fishing men, and it was so interesting. And here we see two people fishing, each is facing a different direction, yet both are doing exactly the same work. To me, this is a wonderful symbol of Europe, different countries, different interests, but a shared goal. There is no chaos, there is no panic, just patient, steady work. But yeah, but interesting that they don't do this in one direction, right? It's interesting. Yeah, Baltic States are not single country. I'm from Baltic States, from Latvia. They are three separate countries. Here we see a person walking with a dog. Symbolically, a dog often represents loyalty, and ally, vigilance, and protection. I really like this image. There one more detail that caught my attention. Ahead of them is a gate. The person is moving forward. and accompanied by a loyal companion, and in front of them is a boundary that will have to be crossed, or perhaps a point of transition. Yeah. Poland. I just remind you, at that time I could not comment those cards. I hope you remember this. That it's not those cards. It's from then, back then, what I pulled in February. And now I'm trying to explain. I find this one particularly interesting. I don't see aggression here. Instead, I see someone saying, this is as far as you go. It's like drawing a boundary. Look. That immediately reminds me of Poland's very firm position over the past months. Well, I'm not a politician, but I know where to get consultation about this. Yeah. Germany. I believe this is Rafik player. He's running, carrying the ball, taking the initiative. Looking at recent events, Germany has indeed become much more active. To me, this symbol turned out to be surprisingly accurate. I don't know. Are you still with me? But I wanted to do that. Yeah, maybe one day I will learn to talk from myself English. Yeah, maybe. England, remember that when I pulled that card, we see someone meditating, a kind of British calm. I don't know, do you say this? In English, in Latvian we say, oh, it's it's a British calm. We say that. It feels like a very British image to me. So, what can I say? Novi, I pulled that one. He isn't speaking, he is creating music, harmony. Music often symbolizes culture, bringing people together, a gentle kind of influence, not power, not conflict, but harmony. Yeah, violin. Okay, Finland. The person is sitting quietly, watching, waiting, not rushing. Somehow that reminds me of Finland's calm and measured public communication. And Russia in this breaking point situation. We already talked about this. No, it's not about Russia. Sorry, Russia. We are already talked about that one. So we know about Russia. And now this one is the Collective Security Treaty Organization, a military alliance led by Russia. So the military alliance currently consisting of 6 member states: Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Armenia. This person looks well dressed, neat, organized. Everything appears to be in order, but he is standing there, completely alone. No one is behind him. It leaves me with the question: the structure is there, but what about the substance? I find that a very interesting symbol. Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, in this situation, kind of formally Russia has their supporters. Yeah, but with what are they supporting? Yeah, formally yes, but interesting. And Belarus, very interesting. I was thinking about this. Here we see someone walking across a very narrow beam, trying not to lose their balance, carefully making one step after another. They haven't fallen, but they can't move freely either. To me, that reflects Belarus' current position remarkably well, balancing, choosing every step with great care. Actually, I wanted to say something more, but I don't know in English what you say. But I just reminded this situation where he tries to somehow. I read some news in that Ukraine said that they have to stop They have to stop something. I cannot remember even in Latvian. Otherwise, they will stop. And Belarus said that they cannot, they don't want to, well, not in those words, but that they don't want to be pulled in a war, let's say that way. I don't know. So, and they really stopped doing those things because I don't know how to say in English, but it's because that was something why Russia could get in Ukraine. So they have to really, for them it's difficult, I think, because they have to be great friends with Russia, but they don't want to get in this war. So yeah. China, look how I see now China. Do you see that this isn't a race? Instead, it reminds me of a Formula One pit stop. The car doesn't enter the pit lane because the race is over. It comes in to change the tires, make adjustment, carry out repairs, and prepare for the next stage. That's the part that stands out to me the most. Preparing for what's coming next. Nobody is rushing, nobody is panicking, everyone is preparing the machinery. To me, China appears to be adjusting its position and preparing for the next phase rather than trying to lead the race. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, they are getting everything done to go then fast. They use this situation for that. It's interesting. It's actually could be like this, I think. Oh, there was a crease. Here we see someone opening the curtains, not walking outside, simply opening the window, letting the light in, looking out. To me, this can symbolize openness, a willingness to see reality more clearly. I think it's a beautiful image. So there's a curiosity. Yeah, somehow like this. Well, that's all for today. I'm thinking about doing another reading on the situation in Ukraine in the near future, but maybe I'm talking too much. When I do, we'll take a look together at what new symbols and archetypes appear. If you have any questions, feel free, who survived till now, to leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm also planning to do a new 3-option card reading on the same your situation, what is its deeper purpose and where it is leading. In Latvian, when I do that, it's people very like them a lot because I use special cards I love, and it's very, very interesting with them to interpret. It's not usual how tarot readers do. So if you're still there, it's a miracle, I would say. And if you hear this, then I hope you see in my next video. As soon as it's ready, I translate it into English. I'll be back to share it with you. Thank you so much for, let's read properly. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again in my next video, and if this video resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to share it with anyone who might enjoy it. Actually, I didn't write that way, but GPT sometimes puts something something what he thinks it sounds better. I would not dare to ask you to share this one with and this is the first time I read this one. because otherwise I understood I will never do this, because I have lots of things to do. I'm writing a book about tarot and Scandinavian runes, and maybe now I'm like ha 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 ha, but actually I'm very much do. I read a lot and then investigate into things about tarot cards and about history and about secret meanings, and it's so fascinating and so deep. It takes my time, and I go so slowly with all this, so slowly. And then I have to think about my survival. So I have very wonderful work to do, writing letters. I call them soul letters. I write a letter, I take cards, I see situation. It takes all my day, and I write one letter. And then I offer to people. I said I have followers in Latvia, and I say just this one about what it is letter, just the name of letter, let's say that way. And if someone resonates with this, and someone always resonates with this day or next day, they take this letter, and I write this letter, just I don't know to whom, but I know that I write it for specifically one person. Yeah, and I write it just in one, how do you say in English, in one, just it's a one letter, once, only one can buy it. And I work all day, because I do slowly everything, and I investigate even things for my letter to write. It takes, I don't understand, why can't I like normally just write just 1 hour or 2? No, I have to 11 hours work with one letter. It's crazy, and this is how I write book. I'm writing book also very slowly. Yeah, I can be very fast at stay happy and or angry, but yeah. It's confused me, because I read, and again he wrote something from himself, this ChatGPT. It took me totally out of everything I was thinking. I just say bye-bye, and then suddenly I read it. Feel free to share it with anyone who might enjoy it. Okay, now I will finish. Thank you for watching, and if you are interested in some question, write, because if no one have give me a sign that he is seeing me, then of course I will do something, but you know, it's nicer when at least, right? Okay, thank you very much, and hope you see you soon in my channel. Bye bye.